So I don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. Nobody really knows yet. This investigation is ongoing. There is no body cam video. There's this one video that we have. Apparently there's a second one that shows another view, but neither one of them tells the whole story of what happened. And it's not clear yet, but we're going to try to create some clarity tonight. Let's bring in our think tank. We've got a great one tonight. Joining me tonight, folks, there's Michael Bixon, great criminal defense attorney in Atlanta, Randy Kessler, family law attorney and law professor, and Kimberly Bandeau, who's a criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, also former magistrate court judge. So we bring in the best and the brightest here. With the three of you, I want to walk through the video little piece by little piece so we can take a closer look at what we can see, and we're going to freeze the video. And I want to try to figure out what's important, what's not important, and what it may mean in terms of the facts of this case. And let's start with 6 seconds before the first shot is fired. We can see what happens here. First, you see the heads pop up. There's some sort of scuffle behind the car. And now, 6 seconds before the shot, you can see already where Jacob is walking away and officers popping up, and we're starting to see the guns drawn. Kimberly, I'll begin with you. Something was happening on the side of that car on the ground. It's not clear yet, but immediately as he gets up and he's walking away, they're drawing their weapons. What can you take away from that?
That they were giving him some type of commands to stop moving and to stop walking, and he continued to walk is what that video footage implies.
Michael, how important is it what we didn't see in that part of the video, whatever was happening behind the car, on the side of the car, that is out of sight of this camera?
I think that's crucial. What we don't know is why were they drawing. If he's not posing any type of life threat to these officers, why are they pulling out weapons against him? So I want to know is what happened before this video. Was there a weapon? Was there some type of altercation that we don't know about? This man, which I think
we're having some difficulties with your transmission, Michael. Michael, we're having a little bit of trouble with your transmission, but I think we heard most of what you had to say. Let's move on. Randy, I want you to take a close look at this next piece of video that we have. This is now, it freezes 4 seconds before the first shot. And you heard Michael saying, was there a weapon, was there not a weapon? As we freeze it here, I'm looking here and I can see something in Jacob's left hand. Doesn't look like necessarily a weapon, but I don't know what it is. Randy, do you see anything? And from your perspective, how important is it what may or may not be in his left hand at this moment?
Well, in the technical details of this case, it's very important. If the cops saw that he had a knife, like they say, and that he was dangerous, that's going to build their credibility. It's going to verify that they really had a reason to be concerned. But look at the lens we're looking through this stuff in. This is still where we are in today's world in America. Even if they had every reason to be afraid, they've got to think more than once or twice about how they react and how they overreact. And no, we're going to be watching. The people are going to be watching. There's going to be videos. You cannot overreact. So were they justified? We don't know yet. And you're right, Vinny. We have a lot to see. There's a lot to know about what happened before. Did the cops have a right to be afraid? Did they have a right to be angry? Did they have a right to be worried? Maybe. Did they have a right to shoot him 7 or 8 times? That's going to be the crux of it. So, I look forward to seeing the rest of this video and how you analyze this frame by frame, because so far, I don't know what the verdict's going to be.
Kimberly, as we look at this part, again, it is 4 seconds before that first shot is fired. It appears something may be in his left hand. How important of a fact is that for this investigation and to figure out what happened and why it happened?
For me, if he was walking towards the officers with the unknown object in his hand, that would change my perspective on it. But he's walking away from the officers with whatever unidentified item he has in his hand. So at this point, I don't know if it's overkill. I believe it might be, but obviously we don't know, like we just discussed, what happened before on the side of that vehicle. But the walking away with my back to you kind of indicates there's not an immediate threat if it's a knife or whatever they're alleging it to be. Or it could be a cell phone, for all we know.
Yeah, I mean, very well could be cell phone, could be keys to the car. I mean, we don't know. Again, information is not coming out. Now, the next piece of video is less than 1 second before the first shot is fired. Less than 1 second. He comes around, opens the door, officer grabs his shirt, and then he sort of either is trying to get into the car or leaning in to get something. We again don't know here. Randy, here's the first question relative to this part. Again, this is less than 1 second before that first shot is fired. So whatever happens here may be the reason why the officer believed he needed to shoot. What do you see there? Do you see him bending to reach? Do you see him bending to get into a car? Because to get into a car, you got to bend down. Or is it unclear to you at this moment?
It's 100% unclear. Or as we say, clear as mud. You know, there's no way that you can adjudicate anybody's innocence or guilt by this video right from here. There's a lot of evidence that we're going to have to hear. What was he saying? What did the cops see? What was their state of mind? There's right there. We can't tell what happened or why it happened. This is a case that merits further investigation. And the question is going to be, why did they shoot? You know, and what was in their mind? And there you can come up with 100 theories. Defense lawyers, all sorts of lawyers, law professors can come up with reasons and thoughts about why. You know, did they see a gun in the car? Did he say he's going to do something? Did he say he's going to take his children? Who knows? We don't know why. But to answer your question from that video, I don't see any reason that says, hey, you got to shoot this guy based on that clip and that one frame. No way.
Kimberly Bandeau, let me ask you, there's 3 children inside that car, and they're his children, but he's going into a car. Is that part of the equation in terms of potential danger to the children? Could that be part of what an officer is thinking, or is it just, do you think the officer focusing on his own safety? What could be a reasonable explanation at this point based upon the limited information we have?
I don't think the children were concerned their safety, because if they were, like, you wouldn't be unloading bullets into their dad right in front of them if you were concerned about the children. I don't know at this point, like you said, if they are aware where the kids were in the car or not, but I definitely don't think that the kids were in mind. I think it was more of him not obeying their orders to stop walking away from them.
Final piece of video, Michael Bixon. I know we got you back now. I believe you can see. This one is just at the moment, just before the moment that first shot is fired by the officer. And here's the freeze frame. Again, you can see him tugging at the shirt. You can see Jacob's head is out of vision, so it looks like it might be just a little bit lower than the second police officer here. Your thoughts about the positioning, and this is the moment of that first shot being fired, Michael. What questions do you have here?
My biggest question is this: did the officers see anything in that vehicle that could be construed as a weapon? Anything that he was reaching for that they felt was a threat to them? Because if there wasn't, him just not listening to them, him just getting in that vehicle is not an excuse for them to shoot him as many times as they did. It's not an excuse for them to shoot him at all, for that matter. So what I want to know is, was there something that we can't see? A knife, a gun, a baseball bat, anything that would have given them reason to fire the weapons at this man?
All right. As we've all agreed here, there's a lot of information that needs to be filled in, but I think we made some progress here in at least breaking down the limited video that is out right now with the limited information. When we come back, a story we have a lot more information on. As a matter of fact, we had a trial here on Court TV, but the jury could not agree one way or the other. The jury was hung, and now we're getting ready for the retrial of the ice cream man, Michael Keatley. But one big difference in his retrial. He's not going to have his superstar defense attorney because she's being sworn in to become a judge. That story next.
After he cussed us out and told us to get in the ground, he pumped and he clocked the rifle that he had with him. So we're like, I looked at Gonzalo. We're kind of the oldest ones there. And I looked at Gonzalo and, and I just get this over with. I'm thinking he's a sheriff, thinking he's law enforcement. So I looked at him like, let's just do what he's saying, and so he can get out of here and we can keep going, playing our game, whatever.
But it wasn't law enforcement, it was someone who committed murder. And prosecutors believe it's Michael Keatley, the ice cream man, but the jury did not agree, at least unanimously. They didn't agree, they were split. It was a hung jury. There were actually more people voting for not guilty. But now Michael Keatley is going to have a retrial. And big difference, though, in the retrial. His attorney, who was fantastic in that case, his defense attorney, she's becoming a judge. Ted Rowlands has more for us.
We are here this morning on State of Florida versus Michael Keatley, case number 10-18429.
Former ice cream truck driver Michael Keatley is preparing to go on trial for a second time for the same crime.
Upon further deliberation and discussion, the jury has not reached a unanimous verdict, period. The jury is hung, period. This is not going to change, period. And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I am declaring a mistrial in the case.
Keatley is charged with murder and attempted murder for a 2010 shooting that left 2 brothers dead and 4 people injured. Prosecutors claim it was a case of vigilante justice after an armed robbery on his ice cream truck crippled his hand. But this time around, Keatley will be without his longtime defense attorney, Leanne Gowdy, who made a tactical decision to not make a closing argument in his last trial, stunning the prosecution and depriving them of a rebuttal argument. The jury in that case deadlocked.
We have nothing else to say to the jury.
You're comfortable that you know what you're doing when you make that decision not to have Ms. Gowdy present a closing argument. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are you satisfied with the services of your attorneys up until this time?
Absolutely.
Gowdy stepped away from Keatley's case after the mistrial, saying she only ever committed to 1 trial. Now, she is set to become a circuit court judge.
It was very hard watching that file go out of my office. But at the same time, I feel that it went to attorneys that can also do an excellent job for him.
But now Keatley's new attorneys from the Public Defender's Office want out, filing a motion claiming a conflict of interest in the case. Keatley, who remains in jail until trial, tried to make his displeasure known to the court, but was shut down first by his own attorney.
Mr. Keatley is entitled to competent counsel under our Constitution, but he is not entitled to the counsel of his choosing.
Then by the judge.
All right, do you have any opposition to the court allowing the Public Defender's Office to withdraw?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right, stop right there.
But as the hearing came to a close, Keatley insisted on being heard.
Yes, Mr. Keatley.
What I have a question is that when the Public Defender's Office says, well, there could be a conflict when it goes to a strategy or something. Well, what if you decide, okay, we're going to give it over to regional counsel. Regional counsel looks at the case and says, you know what, we don't agree with some of the strategies set aside by the previous.
Well, Mr. Keatley, let me stop you there because I'm very concerned about you are represented and you're represented at this time. I invited you in the beginning for the limited opportunity to see whether you oppose it or not, because it would have been very simple had you not opposed it. No offense to you. I'm not suggesting that you change your mind or that your mind should have been different in the beginning. But to allow you to speak and ask questions at this time, those are certainly bridges that we'll cross when and if we come to them.
Judge Sabella ended up granting the motion, and when Keatley stands trial again, a new team from the Public Defender's Office will face off with prosecutors who believe they have enough evidence to put Keatley away for life.
Yeah, he strikes me as a very difficult client, to say the least. Let's bring back in our think tank. Michael Bixon, would you like to pick up the case? Looks like an easy guy to get along with.
Look, no criminal defense case is easy, and especially when your life is on the line. I can't blame the guy for being concerned about, having his attorney switch in and out on a case where, he could be spending the rest of his life in prison. I mean, if I were him, I'd probably be a lot more vocal, but then again, that's me.
Randy, it's a retrial. And every time I look at a retrial, I think in my mind, and I smile a little bit, and I say, advantage prosecution. Prosecution, I think, always does better second time around, and especially in a case like this, nothing against the new attorneys, but his old attorney was a superstar. She's going to the bench now, where the smartest person in the courtroom should be, wearing a robe. But I think this is going to be a huge advantage for prosecutors.
I agree 100%. And, when we have a family law, a civil case, and I've represented some criminal defense lawyers, and I think they're going to be great clients, and they always say, I never had a burden to prove. I never had to put on any evidence to win the case. Defense counsel like Michael and Kimberly sometimes they can just look at the prosecution, wait for the prosecution to meet the burden and say, I don't have anything else to say, like this lawyer said, because they didn't meet their burden. They can poke holes in it. Now, the prosecution has seen what the defense strategy is going to be. Usually, prosecution puts on their case, meets their burden, and then waits to see what the defense is going to do, what cross-examination techniques, if they're going to put their client up. And they never know that until they've already rested. Well, now they've rested, they've seen what the defense is going to do, and they get a second shot at it. So you're right, advantage prosecution, but you never know. And a plea could be in the offing. Who wants to be a prosecutor that twice tries the case and doesn't win it twice? It may be better, you'd rather be the defense counsel and have a hung jury than have a guilty.
Yeah, and there is actually room for some negotiation because he has spent a lot of time behind bars. So I could see that, Randy. That's a great point. Kimberly, your experience in retrials, is it the same as mine, that prosecutors go in and now that they've seen everything the way it plays out, they tighten up their evidence a little bit, realize what worked, what didn't work, what they need to emphasize, and have a big advantage over defendants?
Yeah, absolutely. Because even more so, which is more value, is actually speaking with the jurors after they reach their verdict to actually get insight into what made their decisions, what was compelling, what wasn't compelling. So you know how to refocus your case and shift. And then you also know what the defense, what their theory is. So you can also shift to address all the holes that they poked in the original case. So it definitely gives you opportunity to improve what you're presenting and to clear up anything that the jurors had concerns about, which is why they weren't convinced of his guilt.
All right, when we come back, on the docket tonight here on Court TV, the Parkland school shooting. Yes, there is going to be a trial, or is there? Should there be a trial? The defense will plead guilty, but the prosecution needs to take the death penalty off the table. What should prosecutors do? We'll talk about that when we come back.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm crime and justice reporter Julia Janae with your legal news break. Suspects are still at large in the shooting death of an 8-year-old girl in Atlanta. Now, over a month later, her family is using billboards to find justice. The family of Sequoia Turner placed 2 billboards near the Wendy's restaurant where the little girl was killed. She was sitting inside of a car on the 4th of July when police say men who were armed fired into that car where she was seated. The billboards feature a picture of Turner and read in part, "Protecting children is not snitching." One suspect, Julian Conley, was charged with murder on July 15th, but no other arrests have been made. Conley admits he was armed during a protest, but denies that he fired any shots at Turner's vehicle. The Wendy's where Turner died is also where Rayshard Brooks was killed by police back in June. And a famed tattoo artist will spend time behind bars in the May 10th crash that killed his friend. David Silva, known for his appearances on the reality show Ink Master, as you see there, prosecutors announced about an hour ago he's been sentenced to 364 days in jail and 5 years probation. He pleaded no contest last month to gross vehicular manslaughter. Police say he was speeding when he lost control of his sports car and crashed into a tree, killing his passenger, Gloria Larry LeBaire. LeBaire was an up-and-coming YouTuber. He posted a video just before the crash saying he was excited about celebrating his 25th birthday that night. Silva originally faced second-degree murder charges and up to 15 years in prison. And the wife of a disgraced former congressman in Florida will be serving her sentence at home. Margaret Hunter received 8 months of home confinement stemming from her role in a fraudulent campaign finance scheme. Prosecutors say she admitted to misusing more than $250,000 in campaign money. A federal indictment said the couple used money to cover personal expenses, from fast food to luxury vacations, family trips to Disney World, even buying plane tickets for their 2 pet rabbits. Duncan Hunter, a senator from the San Diego area, received an 11-month prison sentence on corruption charges earlier this year. His sentence was later delayed because of coronavirus and the pandemic. That wraps up your Court TV legal news break.
On the docket tonight, the Parkland school shooting trial. Yes, we are still tracking that. It has not happened. Things starting to slow down a little bit. It was supposed to happen this year. Doesn't look like it will because of the COVID shutdown. Now the defense filing some motions in court. In the meantime, this is a story that is absolutely significant and important. 17 people lost their lives, 14 children. 3 staff members, 17 others were shot but survived. And then think of all the family members and friends and other students at the school who survived all of this, who now have to live with the aftermath. So it's an important case, an important trial. Chanley Painter has more for us tonight.
911, what is your emergency?
It's Valentine's Day 2018.
They believe there's a shooter at the school.
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School is under siege. An active shooter is terrorizing the campus. It was just a normal day at school that suddenly turned to a nightmare for the city of Parkland, Florida. The massacre marked the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history. Surveillance video and witness identification led to the arrest of then 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz.
He was in my class in 7th grade, and I knew he wasn't okay when he punched the window in and said, "I'm gonna cause karma one day," because he got in trouble with the teacher.
Cruz was a former student at the school. He'd been expelled the year before, in February 2017, for disciplinary reasons. But records indicate he was a troubled person long before the massacre.
He was a huge threat to the school because of his behavior. When he was suspended, they found shells of bullets in his backpack.
Just 40 days earlier, a woman who knew Cruz told the FBI he was collecting guns and ammunition and feared he was, quote, going to slip into a school and start shooting the place up. What's more, investigative reports point to years of a disturbing digital trail. Cruz reportedly researched mass shootings and posted threatening messages all over the internet. This one says, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." In fact, it would be those very phone records as well as school surveillance video that would help authorities piece together what they say happened. A little after 2 p.m., Cruz took an Uber from his home to the school about 3 miles away. Security video shows a male wearing black jeans, maroon shirt, vest, and hat, carrying a large black bag, enter Building 12. In the first floor stairwell, he takes out an AR-15 rifle. Just then, a student walks in, sees the gun, and hurries out. At 2:21 p.m., school video shows the active shooter terrorizing all 3 floors of the freshman building, taking the lives of 14 teenagers and 3 adults. Alerted by a fire alarm and what sounded like gunshots, the school resource officer, the only other person armed with a weapon on campus, makes his way towards the building, but does not go in.
We started hearing more and more shots, so then everyone started running.
Minutes later, the shooting finally stops. The suspect drops the weapon and tactical gear, and authorities say he left campus, blending in to the crowd. Police hadn't even entered the building yet. At 3:36 p.m., more than an hour later, Cruz was stopped and arrested. Authorities interrogate Cruz and appear to secure a confession. He is charged with 17 counts of first-degree premeditated murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. During hours-long questioning, Cruz informs the detective he hears voices in his head that tell him to
burn, kill, destroy.
Cruz now faces the death penalty at trial.
I understand fully what you're saying.
Okay, are you having any trouble concentrating?
No.
His lawyers say Cruz is prepared to plead guilty in return for a life sentence, an offer the prosecutors have rejected.
And let's start the discussion of this case right there, okay? Prosecutors seeking the death penalty in this case and not wanting to offer any sort of a deal that would take the death penalty off the case. Let's bring in our think tank. Kimberly, your thoughts. You're a former prosecutor. What do you think prosecutors should do here? I mean, they've got overwhelming evidence. I don't think they're going to lose this one. They're not going to lose this one. The question then becomes life or death. Do you just move on, or do you go forward and you try the case, and if you get a conviction, you try to put him on death row?
I think what's probably pushing the prosecution is the family of the victims, and probably pushing aggressively so where they have to listen to who they represent, which is the state, which is via the victims in this case and the families. And so that's probably not an option. And they're going to have to actually probably try this case, because if I'm the defense attorney, I'm not going to let my client accept a plea for the death penalty. We're at least going to have a trial. We're at least going to put up a fight in the trial, even though we know it's probably a losing trial, but we're not going to agree to die.
Randy, you know, people make the argument all the time, anti-death penalty, and I'm not making the argument one way or the other. The argument I'm making is, if you're going to have the death penalty on the books in your state, in your jurisdiction, if it's the law, right? The representatives of the people have voted on it and say, yeah, this is the law in Florida. If you're going to have it, I think this is the kind of case where it's very applicable. Because if you're not going to seek the death penalty in this case, when would you? When would you seek the death penalty? It's on the books. It's the law in Florida.
You're exactly right, Vinny. But Michael and Kimberly and I and you have all seen cases where the death penalty was warranted, if not now, when, and there was no conviction or no death penalty sentence. And, you know, what we wouldn't want to happen is a double tragedy. The first tragedy was, of course, the shooting. A double tragedy is you could have a confused jury, a confused juror who thinks, well, if I convict him, that means he's going to get the death sentence. We know that's not the case. You convict and then you have sentencing. But you could have people on the jury that are so anti-death penalty that they think we can't convict him of the murders because then he might get the death penalty. How much of a tragedy would that be? I mean, it's a tough call for the prosecution, because you've got a guaranteed life sentence without parole that he's willing to agree to. And that's 90% of the battle. It's a tough one, but I think Kimberly's right. The families want to see this aired out. They want to see that justice is done. And this is, if there is a case for the death penalty, you're right, this screams, you know, why should he be allowed to live when all these nice, wonderful young children and teachers were not allowed to?
And I think there is, I don't think everyone has the same perspective from the victims' families, but I think there are absolutely some that believe this is a death penalty case. I think there's some that are anti-death penalty and would be okay with it. I think they're somewhat split. I don't know if they're split down the middle, exactly what the breakdown is, but Kimberly is right. There are family members that do want to see this case fully prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law in Florida, Michael Bixon, which does have the death penalty. If we're going to have it, isn't this the type of case where it should be used?
I don't think it should ever be used. I mean, it doesn't matter how much blood has been shed. I don't think it's right for the state to execute a person. Doesn't matter what the charge is, doesn't matter what happened. I don't think the state should have the authority to execute someone. Now, under the law in Florida, and from what we've seen in cases in Florida that are death penalty cases, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not surprised that they're seeking the death penalty, but whether or not it should be implemented, in this case or ever, I think is a totally different question. And for this case and for every other case, I strongly believe the answer is no.
All right, folks, we are tracking this one. And as I said, things are slowing down a little bit because of the COVID shutdown. But the next court hearing and conference for this case will be on September 8th, 2020. September 8th, 2020, status review. And then you see the big blank space there, trial date to be determined. My guess, it's going to be in 2021. Like most of the cases that we are tracking right now, no one is trying cases right now. They're just not trying them. All right, when we come back, folks, we're going to talk again about what's happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But this time, today on social media, I posted some of the reaction to the shooting, which is the demonstrations, the protests, and the rioting that's taking place. Your reaction to the rioting, the 13th juror speaks, when we return.
Shot him numerous times for no reason. It didn't take all that. Disregard that my kids was in the car at all. And you knew they was in there because I kept screaming that before y'all even made it to the other side of the driver's side to get him in the car. I've been yelling that the whole time. Let me get my kids.
That was Jacob Blake's. We can continue watching some of that footage if we have it. Let's put it back up there because that's some of the reaction to everything that happened. This is what happened after the shooting of Jacob Blake. You heard from his fiancée. She was upset. Well, she wasn't the only one that was upset. The entire community was upset. And a lot of people showed their feelings, their anger by protesting, demonstrating, and then things turned violent and turned into a riot. So, posted some of that today on social media, getting your take, your reaction to that reaction, your reaction to the rioting in Kenosha, Wisconsin. We begin with our 13th juror comment of the day coming from Allison, who writes, "The rioting is horrible. People are extraordinarily angry that police are killing people of color disproportionately. They have lost faith in justice. We need to see real change if we expect a different reaction to needless violence." Kimberly Bando, what do you think when they say real change? I hear that term a lot, and I know it's well-meaning and well thought out, but what does it really mean, real change?
I think most importantly is de-escalation. My failure to comply, his failure to comply, should not automatically result in a death sentence. It should be, sir, stop, let's do something else, something that's less lethal to get control of the situation, but it shouldn't automatically be, he's walking away from me, his back is towards me, and my gut reaction is to shoot 7 shots in his back. It's unacceptable. We have to make policy changes that officers learn that that's not necessarily the first step to go to when someone's walking away, is to shoot them in the back.
Next comment comes from John, and John writes, it's actually John E. Appleseed. I get it. Well done. "We need to bring in the Army already. This is domestic terrorism at its best." Randy Kessler talking about these riots. Do you see this as domestic terrorism? Is it an organized effort? Is it spontaneous? What do you see?
I don't think it is. I think there are some wonderful, well-meaning people, and there are a few agitators, and there are people that are taking advantage, and those people have to be rooted out, and we have to figure out how to separate that. And that's where, for these protests are great and wonderful and part of America. Riots are not. And if you can find the rioters and you can seclude them and you can arrest them and you can punish them, great. That's where the resources have to go when you're talking about stopping the groups. You don't stop peaceful protests. You encourage peaceful protests. You don't allow rioters. And the peaceful protesters have done a good job in a lot of places by identifying those who are trying to agitate and give the peaceful protesters a bad name.
Pam tonight writing, "What happened to no one is above the law? However, rioters seem to feel they are. This has to stop. The people losing everything did nothing wrong. Stop sensationalizing these criminals. Put an end to this with force and charges that will follow them forever." Michael Bixon, what about the victims of the rioters? the people who have lost their businesses, the people who live in these neighborhoods where all of a sudden things aren't safe and stores are gone and their neighborhoods are destroyed. What should we say to those folks?
I mean, look, it's a tragedy if someone loses their business, if they lose their property because there's people out there rioting. But on the other hand, there's people being murdered. There's people being shot by the police. I think that we need to gain perspective in terms of what our priorities are. And I certainly think that while, a business being vandalized or burned down or destroyed is a bad thing, people being murdered, people being shot by the police is a higher priority. And I see people shifting the argument from, well, what do we do about the police, to what about these protesters burning down stuff? And I think that, the focus really needs to remain on the state overacting, police overacting against citizens.
Mal tonight. I thought it said Matt. It's Mal. This is the type of criminal behavior that just proves the mindset of people the police have to deal with day in and day out and need to be able to protect themselves from when one resists arrest. We have about 20 seconds here. Kimberly, what do you think the mindset is of the people who are setting the fires?
That they're expressing themselves, because that's the voice, that's the language of the unheard person. Because we say it, hold up signs, go on, and nothing changes. And you click on social media, another person shot in the back, unarmed by a police officer.
Final comment tonight. Patricia writes, it's an excuse to riot, burn businesses, and steal stuff. I don't see what this helps. And we'll leave it there. Kimberly Bandeau, Randy Kessler, Michael Bixon, fantastic. Thank you so much for helping us out tonight. Really do appreciate it.